very excited to be speaking with a DFL endorsed candidate for District 11B, Tom Jones. Tom was born and raised in Arthur Township in Kanabec County, where he lives with his wife and 2 kids in his childhood home. He has worked as a carpenter and building contractor for 38 years and is a member of his township and county planning commissions. Tom is a thoroughbred Minnesotan, an avid outdoorsman, a public servant, and he will be a great representative for his district. We're so excited to have him here today. Welcome, Tom. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks, and thanks for having me here today. This is good. You know, the campaign is going well, and you know, I believe it's all about getting your face in front of the people, because it's really, for me, it's not about necessarily change, but it's about movement. And it's a time for us to think about those long arc issues, whether it's education or an aging population or infrastructure, roads and bridges or digital, and try to move that to a place where we can discuss them and formulate a plan that really starts working for the people of my district.
Absolutely. You know, you're doing a lot of great things in your community right now, and what really pushed you to run for this office?
I grew up in this district, and Claire and I moved back home to raise a family, and you know, we realized that we were blessed. We were given opportunities, and those opportunities allowed us to live the life as we saw fit, as we, you know, that worked for us. We could raise our family, we could go to T-ball, we could, you know, the 4-H, the Cub Scouts, and I just want to make sure that the next generation has the same opportunity in that same place. And sometimes that district, to me, feels a little ignored. And I mean, we see that when you see dark money come into town. When you see, and I'd like to think that a rural district or any district should be able to fund its own candidates, and so that the people have to talk directly, the candidate has to talk directly to the people.
Right.
And so, and what made me do it this time? After 38 years, launching the family, it just seemed like, you know, it's time to fish or cut bait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. You know, as you know, Kanabec and Pine counties have been struggling economically for several years now. And if you were in the legislature, how would you bring economic vitality back to the communities in your district?
Well, I know that Pine and Kanabec counties often find themselves in the higher unemployment parts of the state. And I'm not sure exactly what that's all about. I believe that part of it is because we have a lot of workers who go south for their jobs, and a lot of those jobs tend to be construction. You know, talking to the president of the local Pine Tech and Community College, he says that his students, 72% of them are the first person in their family to go to post-secondary education. So jobs and training would be a focus for me, and to make sure that the people are prepared for and you know, when the jobs do come back, they're often different jobs. Mm-hmm. They require different skills, and so we need to focus on that. And you know, and infrastructure. If we could get some good infrastructure, those construction jobs might tend to be a little more long-lasting.
Well, as a contractor, you've probably seen firsthand the frustration amongst people who are working hard, some of them working harder than they ever have before. But as this economy is improving for so many people, we know there's a number of people in our communities throughout Minnesota who just aren't quite feeling it yet. And as you mentioned earlier, Pine and Kanabec County are great examples of regions of this state that you know, certainly there's a lot of people still struggling, and we need to take care of those people. So I'm glad you recognize that. And of course, you know, one of the things is we need people like you in the legislature who are going to go up there and actually govern in the best interests of the people of the district, and not necessarily just play partisan politics. And the fact is we haven't passed a bonding bill, which would have put, you know, thousands of people across the state to work, in addition to investing in critical infrastructure projects. And you know, really important to your district is transportation, and we still haven't to this day passed a comprehensive transportation plan which would actually fix our roads and bridges throughout Minnesota. There's a lot of politics being played with this right now. What are some of the transportation issues facing families in central Minnesota, and in particular in 11B, and how would you address them in the next legislature?
Well, I mean, transportation, of course, you know, it's not all just superhighways.
Right.
We have, as do a lot of rural districts, I suppose, have a lot of county, township roads, and those counties, because we have a low tax base, we depend on any type of infrastructure we do, whether it's schools or hospitals, fire and safety. We require, we have only our residential tax base to draw on. And like, again, our commuters, our workers, a lot of them go south to work. And the benefits of that labor, that, you know, that profit-creating labor, accrues to the municipality or the region in which it's performed. And so they come back with a part of a paycheck and try to live their lives. And when it comes time for infrastructure rebuilding or updating, like I say, we have to go back to the residential tax base. And so that's why it's also important for us to think about local government aid and county program aid. And it seems like every time we get into a budget problem, those are some of the first things that get cut.
Right.
And just like construction lags when we come out of a recession, those two things, county and local government aid, lag as well. I don't think we're up to the point we were 20 years ago yet, and that aid only buys half of what it did 20 years ago.
You know, it really strikes me, in 2014 the Republicans ran on this platform of an acute focus on greater Minnesota, particularly on transportation and infrastructure projects like broadband, as well as helping to make sure that counties and local governments in Minnesota receive the aid that they need to provide services to the residents in those communities. Yet 2 years later, we still find ourselves in the same place, and Representative Rarick and Speaker Doubt and the Republicans have completely refused to deliver on any of those promises. What are you hearing at the doors? Are you hearing that frustration amongst the people that you're talking to, that we're hoping that politics would be different in St. Paul and that their communities would actually not be ignored?
Well, you do hear that, and you know, and it's like I say, it's not just potholes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes transportation for us is also senior mobility.
Right.
So what I hear from them most often is the broadband issue, and gridlock.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's broadband, it's gridlock, it's
Right.
senior issues, it's wishing that they didn't have to hear about the disappointment when they parade out the majority and minority leaders of the two houses. What they want to hear about is movement.
Right.
You know, they don't necessarily want to hear the only answer that comes to their mind first, but they do want to hear about movement, and they want to imagine that things are being discussed in a substantive way, so that even if it's a tough issue, that something is going to put a dent into the crisis to crisis mode that we seem to have been in for many years.
You know, in the early 1900s, big issue in rural parts of America, and frankly, rural parts of this state, was electrification, and how we got electricity out to these rural communities to make sure that they could survive and essentially grow and keep their population intact. And today's modern equivalency is broadband access, and yet many communities in your district and throughout Minnesota don't have the high-speed internet they need to keep people in the communities and attract employers and grow jobs. Can you talk about that a little bit, how important it is to your community, and again, how disappointed people are that that the Republicans have refused to actually put any investment into rural broadband access.
Well, it's funny because I remember when electrification came to the house I'm living in now. We weren't there at the time, but we owned it. And Dad brought electricity to the farm so that a young couple of brothers could milk some cows down in the barn. And you know, people today think that that's inconceivable.
Right.
You know, that there would be a time when someone would hack their way through the woods to bring power to someone so they didn't have to milk cows by kerosene lamp.
Right.
And you're right. Broadband now is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity, not just for established businesses, but for entrepreneurs trying to get started, and for students. Mm-hmm. You know, the schools are operating more and more with iPads and with their assignments and texts on a digital platform. And you can't leave the house at 7 p.m. to go down to the library to catch a hotspot to do your homework. So, so it is a disappointment to me that the Republican Party, which heralded this session, this 2-year session, as focusing on rural Minnesota, and it hasn't come across.
I think it's important for voters to remember the promises that were made and the fact that the Republicans didn't deliver on them. My family, my in-laws are from greater Minnesota and farm in southern Minnesota, and you know, the struggles of communities throughout the state are real, and they're looking to St. Paul and to their elected officials for answers. And they don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. They just want someone to pay attention to their community. And Kurt Dowd and the Republicans, including Jason Rarick, said they would, and they haven't. And so I know that you will remind voters of that, and God willing, and through a lot of hard work, you know, you'll be elected and be able to change the discourse in St. Paul. So we're really fortunate that you decided to step up and run for this, Tom. We really appreciate it. I've got just one last question for you before you head back out onto the campaign trail. Running for office is no easy task. Who inspires you to campaign each day, day in, day out? Who are your role models? Who sort of inspires you? And you know, sort of, why did you do this?
Well, I'd have to say it's probably my parents, my family, and my neighbors. You know, I remember sitting around and the table, and Mom would say, something would come up, and Mom would say, well, people are people. You know, and my family, who has always been supportive of this opportunity, and my neighbors, because I'll tell you what, having lived with and worked with, known a lot of people up in that area, I believe that most people want to work hard. You know, they want to see accomplishment. They want to see that what they do matters. And I want to let them know that their voice matters in St. Paul as well.
Well, thank you, Tom. I want to thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck on the campaign trail. I just want to remind everyone that Tom Jones is our DFL endorsed candidate for the State House in District 11B. I'm proud to have such dedicated, passionate candidates like Tom who will work to build a stronger and better Minnesota. And if you are interested in getting involved in Tom's campaign, click the volunteer tab at tomjonesmn.com or visit our website at www.dfl.org. And finally, please share this video with your networks and stay tuned for future episodes of Chair's Corner. With your help, we can elect DFL candidates like Tom on November 8th and make positive, progressive changes in our communities throughout the state. Thank you so much.